Hey everyone, I have an interesting product to talk about today. This is a 6-in-1 USB Type-C magnetic SSD enclosure from Acasis, but it's not just for storage. It also acts as a USB hub because it's got like memory card slots, a Type A port, Type C port, and there's an HDMI port in there as well. But you can see that it works well with smartphones. You can also use it with tablets and laptops, computers, but you can put any size of SSD in here as well. Very, very cool. So Acasis did send this out to me for review, but they've not seen this video and they've got no influence on what I think or what I say in this video to all of you. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at this Acasis 6-in-1 enclosure. The magnetic docking station is available directly on the Acasis website. Model number EC-1401. It retails at around $55 with a 1-year warranty, with Acasis shipping to a total of 78 countries around the world. The package includes 2 M2 SSD fasteners, 2 thermal pads, and a short flexible USB Type-C to Type-C cable that is rated as supporting 100 watts of power and 10 gigabits per second speeds. An adhesive magnetic O-ring is provided for customers that do not own a magnetic phone or magnetic phone case, and a short user manual that explains how to use the enclosure is also included. The enclosure itself looks great, with the magnetic base looking similar to MagSafe power banks. One side has 2 ports, an HDMI 2.0 port which is capable of 4K at 60Hz, and a 10 gigabits per second Type A port. At the front are some LED indicators, the Type-C host port that connects to your device, and a Type-C power delivery port that accepts up to 100 watts of power and can output up to 90 watts of power. At the other side is a 10 gigabits per second Type-C port and 2 SD 3.0 card readers for microSD cards and full-size SD cards. The top of the enclosure can be removed easily without a screwdriver, revealing an internal fan to keep temperatures low and a full M2 SSD slot. Yes, you heard that right, they've managed to squeeze a full M2 SSD slot into this enclosure, and it supports 2280, 2260, 2242 and 2230 M2 SSD formats. Adding an SSD is as simple as applying a thermal pad to your SSD, inserting it into the M2 slot, and then securing it with one of the provided fasteners. Then simply close the enclosure. I weighed the enclosure in at 112 grams, which is 3.9 ounces, and after installing an SSD with a thermal pad, the weight increased to 124 grams or 4.4 ounces. After inserting a SanDisk Extreme microSD card and formatting my 1TB Samsung 970 EVO Plus SSD to exFAT, I ran speed tests across 2 Apple computers. On my M4 Mac Studio, the front 10 gigabits per second USB-C ports delivered read speeds of 797.5 megabytes per second and write speeds of 685.5 megabytes per second with the SSD. Switching to the rear Thunderbolt 5 ports improved performance noticeably, with read speeds reaching 920.2 megabytes per second and write speeds climbing to an impressive 1 gigabytes per second. On my M5 MacBook Pro, testing the enclosure using the laptop's Thunderbolt 4 ports whilst the laptop ran on battery resulted in read speeds of 913.6 megabytes per second and write speeds of 972.4 megabytes per second. When the laptop was plugged in and charging, performance increased a little, with read speeds increasing to 918.8 megabytes per second and write speeds rising to 987.6 megabytes per second. The SanDisk Extreme microSD card showed expected results from an SD card 3.0 card reader. On the Mac Studio's front ports, read speeds reached 166.1 megabytes per second, whilst write speeds were limited to 83.5 megabytes per second. Using the rear Thunderbolt 5 ports produced the same read performance, but write speeds improved to just over 100 megabytes per second. A similar pattern appeared on the MacBook Pro. Whilst running on battery, the microSD card achieved read speeds of 167.1 megabytes per second and write speeds of 83.6 megabytes per second. Once the laptop was charging, the read speeds were the same, but write speeds once again increased to over 100 megabytes per second. My M4 iPad Pro recorded the same speeds whether power was connected or not. For the microSD card, I registered 164 megabytes per second reading and 74 megabytes per second writing, whilst the Samsung 970 SSD showed over 800 megabytes per second reading and writing. With no power connected to my iPhone 17 Pro Max, the microSD card tested at 165 megabytes per second reading and 74 megabytes per second writing. The manual notes that any SSD that draws more than 4.5 watts requires additional power. So I was unable to test the SSD with no power connected, as the SSD has an average power draw of 6 watts and a maximum power draw of 9 watts. When I first connected power, the microSD card was showing 39 megabytes per second reading and 35 megabytes per second writing, with the Samsung 970 SSD only showing 39 megabytes per second reading and writing. I initially assumed these low benchmarking results were caused by the Enclosure's controller overheating. The iPhone did show a message once or twice about too much power being provided to the accessory, so I spent hours testing different cables and different chargers. The issue disappeared when I returned to testing a few days later, with the microSD card testing at 165 megabytes per second reading and 74 megabytes per second writing, and my Samsung 970 SSD testing at 839 megabytes per second reading and 806 megabytes per second writing. It is worth noting that I did also install a 2TB Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus SSD into the Enclosure to see if mobile connections were better with a different SSD. The SSD was formatted as exFAT and was correctly recognised by all of my computers, but sadly my iPhone never showed the drive as being available. The SSD benchmarking results are impressive for an Enclosure that is connected to a smartphone, but sustained reading and writing over time is what matters when copying files or video recording. I use Blackmagic Design's Blackmagic Cam app to record videos at a 4K resolution and a high bit rate using Apple ProRes Raw. Unfortunately, the results were not good. 120 frames per second and 100 FPS recording stopped recording after a second. 60 FPS stopped around 2 seconds, 30 FPS stopped close to 5 seconds, and 24 FPS reached over 7 seconds. This suggests that the Enclosure cannot handle the high bitrate recording that Apple ProRes Raw demands. On a positive note, I had no issues recording using the highest bitrate with H.264 and H.265 codecs at 120 frames per second, which makes this a good solution for recording regular quality videos directly to your own SSD. So I've spoke about features and I've did a lot of performance tests, but in this section what I'd like to do is summarise my thoughts and talk about the pros and the cons of this Acasis Enclosure. Let's start off with the positive. This is without doubt one of the smallest and lightest USB enclosures that you can get. You get a micro SD card slot, you get a full size SD card slot. Both of those are the older 3.0 standard, but still good. We've got a Type-C input, we've got a Type-A input and HDMI as well. And you can use it with smartphones, you can use it with tablets, laptops, any type of computer, but obviously, the Type-A port, the memory card slots and HDMI out, those are going to be incredibly useful to anyone that's got a phone or a tablet. For example, you could use this to, take it on holiday and use it to connect your phone or tablet to a television, play some films, or you could use it for storage, etc. So it's pretty cool what it offers as far as, what you get. The fan is spinning. You see that? Oh, spin it again. So let it spin. I've just stopped it. There we go. I thought I broke it there. So the fan is spinning there, and we've got an SSD slot, and the SSD supports, the slot supports all different sizes of M2 SSD. So it's quite a good package overall, and I don't think it's expensive. You know, when you look at a lot of USB enclosures out there, they're a lot more expensive than this, especially dedicated SSDs can be a lot more expensive. So if you buy this, you can use your own SSD, perhaps one that you've got already. But we also have to talk about recording, because Acasis market this as an SSD enclosure for iPhone users, but they also talk about 4K at 120 Hz ProRes. Now, I'm going to give a little disclosure here. One being that I have used a lot of Acasis products, and I still do. I've got a few Acasis USB 4 V2 enclosures. I've got their 10 gigabits per second network adapter, and those are excellent. What I love about those is that they just work. Just plug and play, they work, no issues. But that obviously is not what I've experienced with this enclosure. I ran into a few problems, but the reason I'm disclosing all of this again is because I can only share with you the results that I see. I can't make stuff up. I just share with you exactly what I see. And I had some issues with this. They're marketing it as 4K 120. I was not able to record at any kind of ProRes. I just struggled with it. And that's not something I've seen with any other portable SSD. Now, I need to put an asterisk on that because, again, all I can do is share my results. There are some other people that have reviewed this enclosure and they have not had the same issues that I've had. Like these videos, I think, are in German. Obviously, watch them. You can watch them with subtitles. I don't know German. But this person here at the top, they did a ProRes Raw test and they didn't see any issues that I saw. So there are some people using this enclosure and they've not had the issues that I've had. Now, just to kind of backtrack and just talk about the issues that I've had. Well, with this, I was able to connect and do speed tests with my tablet, my laptop, my computer, my mobile phone, and I had no issues with all the devices except my mobile phone. Now, this one's a Samsung 970 Evo Plus or whatever I think it's called. That was connecting most of the time, but a few times it was just not being recognized, and it would only show you the micro SD card slot. So sometimes the SSD was not being recognized. My 2 terabyte Sabrent, whether I used power or not, was never acknowledged by the mobile phone. Again, no issues like that when connecting to laptop or computer or anything like that. I just didn't see those issues. So, if we forget about the mobile phone for a moment, I've had no issues with the USB enclosure. It worked with my tablet, it worked with my laptop and computer, it just worked. There was absolutely no issues at all. So yes, but from a mobile phone perspective, the issues I got was that this SSD didn't work. This SSD occasionally disconnected and, I had to put power in, disconnect it, disconnect the cable, disconnect it again. I ran into a lot of problems like that. When it was connected, I was able to run speed tests and I was able to record using H.264 and H.265, and I could record indefinitely. I could record for hours probably because, you're not really pushing the SSD. The problems arose when I tried to record using ProRes Raw. Now, the Samsung drive here is an older Gen 3 SSD. It doesn't draw a massive amount of power, and from what they've said, you don't need to provide power, but I did because it drew a lot more watts. But even with power, I wasn't able to record using ProRes Raw. Now, for context, I have reviewed a lot of other smaller portable SSDs, and I didn't see those same issues with these ones, even when power was running through them, when the charging cable was going through them. And this one was able to record 4K 120 over 11-12 minutes, but I wasn't able to do that here. So from a 4K ProRes RAW recording perspective, my results, my experience was terrible. Now, I did reach out to Acasis and talk to them about this, and they were like, we'll send you a replacement out. Seems like there's an issue with it, but I don't think there is. I don't think there's an issue with it because I don't see that issue with my iPad. I don't see the issue with my laptops and computers. It just seems to be with my mobile phone. And I don't think it's the SSD because, again, when connected to my other computers, this SSD was working fine. There was no issues with it whatsoever. So to me, it seems to be a power issue to the SSD. It seems to be an issue of either not enough power going to the SSD or too much. It just seems to be an issue like that. I don't know what it is, because I have tried a few SSDs. I tried multiple chargers and I tried multiple cables, and I wasn't able to get it. So that's the problem that I've ran into. And from my perspective, the results were disappointing. From a 4K res raw perspective, the results were disappointing. There's no getting away from it. Now, if you buy this at $50 and you think, well, I just want it for the USB enclosure, I don't need ProRes Raw, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. But I will say the one thing that I did notice on the Acasis website is that there's no table showing you, which SSDs are compatible, and that's something that they have for all of their other USB enclosures. What I'd like to see Acasis do is more testing with this USB enclosure. I'd like them to share results and put a table up there that says these SSDs work, these do not, these require power, these do not. We don't have that. So again, I do encourage you to look at other reviews of this enclosure. Maybe I've been unfortunate because of the cables or SSDs that I've used, but I can only share with you the results that I see. And as it stands, yes, this is an incredibly useful USB enclosure, and it really is useful and something that you might fit into your workflow with your laptop and tablet, etc. But they are marketing it as an enclosure for mobile phones. They are marketing it as a way to record ProRes Raw. So from that perspective, I cannot recommend it. My results were terrible. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions, please do post them down below. If you have enjoyed the video, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, take care.